Welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope that everybody has a tasty lunch with them if you happen to be eating. My name is Rebecca Hurst. I'm the director of the Sustainable Solutions Lab at UMass Boston. We are a research institute at UMB focused on trying to understand the disproportionate impacts of climate change on historically marginalized communities and work with them to develop sustainable and equitable solutions. And I'm thrilled to be here today for this second of our Lunch and Learn series, where we're really focusing on trying to understand from folks on the front lines what has worked well for climate justice partnerships. So we reached out to a number of different organizations that are doing community organizing on the ground around issues of climate justice to ask them, who have they partnered with that really helped advance their agenda and to share the story. So looking forward to hearing more today. Before we get started, I wanted to also do a land acknowledgement. I am in Jamaica Plain in Boston, and I'm on the traditional homelands of the Massachusetts people, and also want to acknowledge their near neighbors, the Nipmuc and Wampanoag tribes, who are all still here with us today. And I also just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge the murder of Dante Wright. I know that everybody is thinking about him and his family and his loved ones and hoping for justice. And as we continue to think about how we can plan a resilient future, we obviously need to be just recognizing all the different interconnections between the systemic racism and climate change and how these crises are inextricably linked. So looking forward to continuing to work with all of you to address these intertwined challenges. But as I said, I'm really looking forward to this conversation today, and I'm thrilled that Nancy Smith, who is the program manager for community engagement at the Office of Public Health Preparedness at the Boston Public Health Commission, has agreed to be our moderator. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Nancy, and thank you again, Myra and Dr. Troxler, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for the stewardship that you have at UMass and always being such a wonderful partnership for the Boston Public Health Commission, but also I actually have included you in being one of my very closest friends now. I mean, I'm just in awe with the work that you do and what you continuously keep putting in this great space that we work in. So today, I just want to say that I am actually really super excited to introduce these two powerhouse women, Myra and Tiffany. I hope you guys don't mind me calling you by your first names. I know that we've had a chance to get to know each other a little bit more, but as I've gotten a chance to read more about the work that you guys are doing in there in the community, I'm just in awe. And we're just going to take a little time right now to kind of virtually head down to Miami. I know for myself when I'm traveling, whether it's leaving Logan, Boston, or in Hartsville, Atlanta, Jackson airport, you always, for me, I'm always looking over and I see people getting ready to go to Miami. And I get so excited because I want to go with them. And it doesn't matter what season it is, I always want to go to Miami. And so with that, I just want to let you guys know that there is more about Miami that's happening than us just heading down there to have our tourist moments. So I want to introduce Tiffany. I'm going to introduce first Myra, who has combined the unique stewardship of economic, housing, climate, in working with the community and actually graduating about 400 leaders throughout in this program that she's running called Clear and Heal. And you guys can read on more about the work that she's doing through her bio. And Tiffany, I'm just going to say for you on our public health side, I'm going to put that hat on, data. We all got introduced to more data in the world during this pandemic. I actually have friends now who are more interested in data and how it relates to just the social determinants of health. And so I'm so happy to hear that you've been able to combine all of these things and work with grassroots organizations. So enough about me and what's going on here, Myra and Tiffany. I'm going to hand it over to you guys so that you can start your presentation, and we'll have more time to hear about the great work that you guys are doing in Miami.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, everyone, for having us here. Let me go to present. So yeah, thank you for the introductions. And yeah, I know, I think kind of hit it there when you said that there's so much more to Miami than just when tourists come for spring break and whatnot, or for Art Basel and stuff. There's so much more that goes on behind the scenes, and a lot more that our communities are going through that a lot of people aren't aware of. So thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, my name is Mayra Cruz. I'm the Climate Justice Director at Catalyst Miami. As Nancy said, I oversee 2 different leadership programs that really aim to build the advocacy and leadership skills in community members here who are passionate about building resilience in Miami-Dade, but really through justice and equity. So it's been really rewarding to be a part of that work. And because of that, that's how I've been able to meet Tiffany and to be able to so closely work with her since I started working at Catalyst a few years ago. And so, yeah, I'll pass it on to Tiffany to see if there's anything else you want to add in terms of your introduction.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much, Myra. Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here. I'm based at Florida International University, Miami, and serve as the Director of Science for our Sea Level Solutions Center. I'm also an associate professor of our Earth and Environment Department. And my background is in wetland ecology, as you may have seen in my virtual background. Always thinking about natural environments and thinking more about how natural environments and their structure and processes can confer some services, ecosystem services, benefits for our urban environments. And we'll probably get into that a little bit today. So thank you, and hit it, Myra.
Thanks, Tiffany. So yeah, I also come from a public health background, so I feel a kindredship with Nancy already, because I did public health for undergrad and grad school and did environmental health science and climate and health specifically. So this has all been very, in terms of the work that I get to do, this is probably the other piece of it that I get super excited about, because it's really getting to that intersection of climate and health. But yeah, so Miami, it's really hot. People do kind of know that it's hot here, but I don't think people realize how hot it actually gets and how hot it will get because of climate change. But this is a graph that we show a lot during our Clear and Heal programs, just showing the trend. We do have a lot of transit people here that come, from other places to live here for some time, but we do have a lot of people that have been in Miami for decades, and their families, are the ones who really built Miami up back in the day. And so yeah, you can see that from 1970 to 2015, there's been a pretty decent increase in the number of days that are above 90 degrees. So that's 72 and a half days. I'm sure this is a bit more now, now that this is a little more outdated, but it's a trend that is expected to continue. So by 20, I think it's 2060, I can't see because of the bar, there will be 6 times as many days of extreme heat. So that's 105 degrees Fahrenheit per year than the current average. So that's not that far away. I think we tend to feel like that's 30 years from now, but it can go by pretty quickly. I've been on this earth for almost 30 years, so that feels like a blink of an eye. And yeah, it's really worrisome to think about, especially considering where we are now. And, with the communities that we work with, Catalyst, we particularly work with low, middle wealth communities. And so they're the ones that really can't adapt. They don't have the resources to financially adapt themselves out of these issues. It's hard to keep the AC running when we are getting these extreme heat days and weeks, or, it's just blistering hot outside. And so it really puts people in a tough situation where, especially during the pandemic now, we've had people who risked, their health and safety to go to areas that had air conditioning because they couldn't rent at home. And because we have a utility company here that is disconnecting families and was threatening to, they felt like they had to make that trade-off. So those are just like quick anecdotes of why this work really matters, and how we're kind of connecting the dots and seeing that it's our low income, our communities of color, really Black communities, especially here, that are feeling the brunt of this. And so that's why we're here and why we're working on this issue. And just to kind of further push that point along, we also show this picture a lot just to get to that climate justice and environmental justice angle. So these are two different communities. The one at the bottom, that's Coral Way. It's leading to Coral Gables, which is a much more affluent part of Miami, tends to be more white as well. A lot more money there. And you can see a pretty stark difference between that picture at the bottom and the one at the top, where that's Liberty City. It's a historically Black neighborhood, one that has been really underinvested in, under-resourced. And you can see, there's a bus stop. There's some shelter there, but, I think it's pretty obvious where you want to be waiting for the bus, or where you want to be biking or walking through in your neighborhood. And people do take notice of these things, especially when they come from these communities. They ask questions, why don't we have that? Why can't we have that here? And so that's really where Catalyst and the work that we've been doing with FIU and Tiffany really comes into play, because you can actually start to put numbers to these differences that we see that just go beyond anecdotes that we're getting from community members. So yeah, I'll just quickly intro the work that we have been doing with Tiffany, and then let her take it away and talk through the process and some of the data we've already gathered. But back in 2018, we started having conversations about extreme heat problems. It's something that we don't talk about as much in Miami-Dade. We talk a lot about sea level rise and king tide issues, and extreme heat kind of falls by the wayside. My theory is that, our our beachfront properties, they tend to be wealthier, tend to be more white. So when we talk about sea level rise, they're definitely vulnerable, and it's something that's going to continue to get worse. But when we talk about extreme heat, we're talking about more inland communities that tend to be communities of color that are lower income, and so there's less attention paid there for many reasons. So it's something for us that we've been really passionate about bringing attention to, and it's because the data is less prevalent for extreme heat issues. That's really where we went to Tiffany and said, how can we make this happen? How can we start to get numbers and start to show and demonstrate that what our community members are saying, that it feels hotter in their communities than others? How can we start to prove that, to really raise awareness about this? And so that's kind of how our Shading Dade project came to be. And yeah, I'll hand it over to Tiffany now.
Yeah, thanks, Myra. So this, our project emerged in part from some other citizen science work that we were conducting with local organizations and universities to try to understand where and how much flooding we could get during tidal events. So what people commonly refer to as king tide season. In some low-lying areas around Miami, you can observe flooding associated with these tidal events, and use the same sort of citizen science approach to develop a heat monitoring program with Catalyst. And so in this case, working with our colleague Susan Jacobson and our College of Arts communication architecture and the arts. She's a media expert and has developed these jot form applications that individuals can load onto their, or can access through a phone. And it allows the, the GPS location of where you're, it allows the GPS location to be recorded. You can enter information about, so essentially we work with community members. Catalyst has such an extraordinary reach in the community, able to connect residents and other individuals to participate in this program. But essentially, we provide them with temperature sensors, what they're also referred to as eye buttons, and then provide those individuals with these eye buttons and using that application to record the location of where those eye buttons are placed. And so we're able to document where they're going in, what observations people have about the environment where they're being deployed, and use that information to then eventually go back to collect those eye buttons and upload, or utilize that information to try to get a sense of what the distribution of heat is, or temperature in certain locations, and try to get a better understanding of how the local microenvironment influences that. And so you're seeing in this video a number of images that individuals take when they're making their deployments, and they can also upload that information into this application. Yeah, then I forgot about the video, Myra. It's pretty good.
Came in handy.
I know. And so this is just a simple Google map illustrating, these are average daily high temperatures for some of the deployment locations. And this was in September the deployment was June to September in 2019. And so this is all the locations, and these general information about the temperature are available on this website where the video is also located. And so we continue to, I think we're going to be getting ready for another deployment here fairly soon. And what we're working toward is trying to develop more comprehensive maps for that Catalyst and other organizations can use in their advocacy and policy development efforts.
That was our last slide. But yeah, I think I'll just quickly add that I personally think that the shading date and the citizen science work we've been doing has really helped us to elevate the issue of extreme heat. And we have gotten to a point now where there is more attention being placed by both the city of Miami, Miami-Dade County. And so it's really come a long way, and we have a lot more nonprofits involved. We have staff from the county and from the city, Office of Resilience, that are having conversations with us now about how to build this out more. And there's researchers and PhD students involved now. So I think it's definitely been a key part of that, I would say. I don't think we knew where we were going when we first did this exactly, and we're still kind of figuring it out, but I think it has already, paid dividends in raising this up as an issue.
I have a question to Tiffany. So in the community, you must be looked at very differently now as a researcher, because I know for some folks, they do believe that, researchers just come in, get the information, and they leave. But your relationship, first of all, I just love the relationship that you guys have with each other, which is great for a partnership anyway, period. But I want to ask Tiffany, have you seen how the community responds to you differently as a researcher?
That's an interesting question. I feel like I certainly am invited to give a lot of presentations, which is great. So we get to talk about a lot of the work that we're able to do. Yeah, but it really the point that you raise, Nancy, is so important, because I think in order to connect the data with individuals and help them to understand how it can be used and what it's showing, also, it also requires cultivating a relationship. So, and to cultivate the trust that, science is something that can be used to help improve people's quality of life. And so but it really requires a relationship, rather than the other scenario that you characterize, which is going in, collecting information, and then leaving. Once you make that commitment, you have to sustain it, and it's a lot of work, and is a lot more manageable if you have good partnerships with organizations like Catalyst, who can help to sort of bring that fabric together, so that we can do more together, essentially. And it really does require a lot of energy and work. It's not just your typical research, certainly.
And Myra, do you have anything to say because you're on the side when you hear from the community about the researchers? Have you seen people kind of change their tone towards people coming in and just grabbing the data and leaving? Do you find that people are now seeing that this data does have a voice, and the voice can be used? Because you mentioned the relationship with the county. People can now sit before probably their representatives and give out information and ask them questions about their platform. And have you found that to be the case, where people are now using that data to go in and kind of change the narrative discussion with the representatives in the political field in Miami?
I think that's basically our next step in the process, is to get to that point where we have enough data that we can, have community members use this in their advocacy. I think right now we're at this stage where we're using the data to advocate to our county and city staff who are working on these issues, or plan to work on these issues. I think that's kind of the next step in the evolution of this project, as we do more launches and get more data. Because right now we have kind of a good starting point, but we still have not mapped all of Miami-Dade. It's so huge to begin with. We need so many more sensors, we need so many more launches. So we have like some preliminary data. We have some I think like lines of inquiry, I guess, to follow. But I think that's where we want to get to, is to the point where we have like strong data that's been verified and validated, so that and then we can educate community members about that, and have them meet with their county commissioners or city commissioners to kind of help to keep building this work out.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys just a really, what is the nature of your partnership? I mean, I know we talked about how you guys got put. What is the nature of this partnership altogether, the outcomes?
You want me to go first, Tiffany?
Yeah, go ahead, Myra.
I mean, it's been a really fruitful partnership, I would say. I think part of the reason that this has worked so well is because Tiffany, as a researcher, she isn't, that researcher that's coming in and then saying bye and then not having those sustained relationships. She's been leading these King Tide events for years now, and people know about them, they get excited about them. So she's known, and I think that's been really helpful. Like, people know Tiffany. People like speak really highly of her and the work that she does. And she's also really great about kind of breaking down the science. I think that's a huge other, is
Mm.
making it accessible. And I don't think I've ever had an issue where I was like, Tiffany, like, used way too much jargon there, or didn't, because that really can turn people off and make it inaccessible. So I think I think part of the success that we've had is just that it, I just love working with Tiffany in the way that she does the science. It's easy for people to get involved, and it's not intimidating. That's how we lead our leadership programs as well. We try to create these educational spaces where people feel welcomed and safe. They can ask whatever question they have. And, we know people are coming from different educational backgrounds and levels and understanding. And so, I think it's just been a natural fit with the way that Tiffany, does the work and the way she explains it. I think that's worked out really, really well for us.
All right, Tiffany, hashtag we love science. I'm handing it over to you. I'm going to put you on your own. You're going to have your own show soon. They are popular on the news now. People are watching more science shows. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, I in particular working with Myra and Catalyst in general, and really always pushing us to be thinking differently about how our research can be developed and applied. And as a researcher that has done a lot of work in the Everglades, we're always, a lot of the research that I do is about trying to understand how, restoration influences outcomes for the Everglades, or, how hydrologic management actions produce different outcomes. And, so my background has been in applied work, but it's so rewarding to be able to, work side by side with people like Myra that are really trying to push the envelope in terms of, putting equity and out front, and, really trying to connect the individual resident or business owner with climate, a better understanding of what's going on with climate change and how it can influence them personally, and how we can improve the information that they're getting so that they can take more ownership, have the capacity to take more ownership and more control of their environment and their quality of life. That's just been super rewarding as someone who has spent a lot of time in the Everglades and getting a lot into, more into our urban environment, and trying to understand how we can use science to improve people's lives. It's been super rewarding, and I look forward to all of the work that we'll do in the future. And Myra is just getting at very early stages of her career and professional development, and it's been wonderful to see how excited she's been about moving on, or continuing to develop her expertise and skills and knowledge in this space, and really dig into it further. It's been wonderful to see that development as well.
That's awesome. I'm gonna sidebar you later to ask you more questions about, the alligator walking across the lawns, my friends, when I was telling them about it, they were like, I want to know more about that. I said, I'll sidebar that question later. I know that's
you gotta watch out.
Just watch out while you're out on those golf courses, people. All right. I want to ask you, how did you guys coordinate as partners? How did you guys coordinate this whole piece, them being partnerships?
I think naturally we kind of, I think we left kind of like the process of how to figure out like where to put the I buttons, how I want to collect them, like that sort of nuts and bolts of how do we do this and get the best science possible. The data collection kind of we saw that as Tiffany and her team's expertise as the researchers. And then we saw the community engagement piece and the outreach and the education as our expertise and what we could bring into this space. So I think it naturally worked really well. We kind of took the lead on spreading the word when we were, doing these launches, and getting, our leadership program alumni involved, and, alerting our partners that we thought would be interested in this involved to get people to come out. And yeah, during the days that we were doing these deployments, would kind of like the quick little snippet I showed of the slides, we walked people through like, this is what's happening in terms of extreme heat problems here. These are the people that tend to be most vulnerable to extreme heat. These are the issues that we're seeing so far right now, just like the general context, making sure that people understand, like, why are you here? Why am I here? What is the point of this?
Yeah.
And also just starting to kind of plant the seeds of like, what can we potentially do with this data, and having them kind of start to think through the possibilities of how this can help in the long run. And yeah, like I said, really leaving the process itself, like teaching people about the optimal location for placing sensors and all of that to Tiffany and her great team.
So did that make it much easier? Because you guys both are subject matter experts, and they always say, as the train is moving and it stops at each station, we get to put more and more good things inside the train. And so your track seemed to be going all in the same direction. Did you guys ever run into a big bump on this train moving forward? And how did you fix that, really quickly with the engine and the caboose and the people inside the train moving the movement?
Tiffany, would you agree and say that the pandemic was the biggest obstacle?
Yeah, that is a really good, yes, absolutely. It's, not being able to get together to deploy sensors out in the field. Major limitation.
Yeah, I think that's definitely been the hardest part. We were in the midst of, the timing was just terrible, but we did kind of like a winter launch, because we wanted to kind of see, we've noticed here that the temperatures in the winter time definitely, people anecdotally say, and then, some of the data showing that they're starting to get warmer as well. We don't have the winters that we used to have, 10 years ago. And so we wanted to start to map that as well. And unfortunately, when we were supposed to collect those sensors was maybe like a week after the pandemic hit and everything shut down. And so you had people saying, I can't collect the sensor because the park is literally gated off and you can't get in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely been a struggle, but I know we're planning to do another launch now that things are a bit more open. So it'll be nice to get that going again and get the momentum back.
I have a question. So how long does the iButton stay in their little deployment area to gather the data? Like, how long is it?
They collect for 3 months based on how we programmed them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's hourly temperature readings.
And do you have any that's missing in action that they didn't make it back?
Yes.
Okay. just want to check, because I know there's strange things that happen. People are like, what is this? They're probably wearing it as a necklace now or something.
Yeah. I think Miami Beach was actually our the location where we lost the most. We're not really sure why exactly, but yeah.
It was probably the tourists down there, trust me.
Possibly.
Yeah. All right. I do have let me see. I saw some questions, and I think there were some questions that were in the question and answer, and let me just see. Okay, here we go. Because I want to be fair. What roles does climate data like temperature readings and otherwise have in your advocacy efforts? Are there any success stories on how data has appreciated improve lives within local communities? And that's from Christina. Thank you, Christina.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know, so one of the big findings that we've had throughout this process that I know we're planning to dig into more is that the temperature readings we got at the very localized, like hyper local level, don't match what we're getting from, like the National Weather Service. They set up the temperature sensor at the airport. So it's like, I think like 40 feet high up in the air, right, Tiffany, something like that. So it doesn't reflect, what community members are feeling on the ground. You can imagine the difference, if you have someone waiting at a bus stop that's unshaded near asphalt, it's going to feel very different than what, those temperature readings are saying from the airport. And I think it was on average a 10-degree difference, where it was 10 degrees hotter. Sorry, 1 second.
No problem.
And so that's really concerning. It's something that I want to dig into more in order to start to figure out if there's a way that we can change that or have more accurate representation of the temperatures that people are feeling on the ground. And so that's something that, I think is going to be really useful and when we're moving forward in the data collection. And I know that there's we've also been working with the University of Miami as well, and that's something they're starting to dig into more and starting conversations with NOAA and others to see, what can we do about this? Like, why did we decide to put things this way? Is there a way to do this differently? I think the other success story is that I was mentioning this a little bit earlier, that we have a lot more partnerships now that have been built out over time. We have this urban heat research group meeting that happens once a month. And I think at first to start off with, Tiffany, Dr. Amy Clement from FIU and like a few students. And then I kind of, found my way in there. And then now, I don't know, we have like 30 people on the call, all sorts of different types of nonprofit partners like Human Rights Watch and the Women's Fund here locally. We have Florida Clinicians for Climate Action. They focus on educating clinicians on climate change so that they can be better advocates for themselves and for their client, for their patients. So it's really grown. So I think that's probably the biggest success stories. And now we have like a coalition of groups that are really interested in pushing this forward. And we all kind of have like the different sides and angles that we're interested in. Like we have one group that's really interested in the effects of extreme heat on reproductive system in women and what that means and having more protections in place. Us who are really interested in like low income communities and making sure that they have what they need to be protected. So I think that's probably the most exciting part, is that we have galvanized a lot of people to work on this.
Okay, thank you. This is from Mary Ellen. What is the cost of the individual sensor and how can a city get more involved with this initiative? I think she's in New Orleans, or because sometimes they do LA. I don't know if it's New Orleans or if it's Los Angeles. So please forgive me.
So I'll answer that. The sensors are fairly cheap, less than $30 a piece. If you're just interested in the temperature, you can also purchase sensors that have a humidity sensor in them, which are a little bit more expensive. But yeah, we be happy to share any of the details on how you could deploy a similar type of activity in your city. Feel free to reach out to either of us or both of us and we can help guide you for sure.
All right. Next question is from Leslie. Can you talk more about how you engaged residents on this project, your process, your successful themes and challenges?
It's probably Myra.
Mhm.
I'll start and you can add. We primarily, I think, started off outreach with our leadership program alumni and our participants. So those that were going through our CLEAR program, which is our climate focused leadership training program. And then I think over time, I think HEAL as well, our housing advocacy leadership training program. We started off with them first in terms of outreach because they are already clued into what's happening in terms of, you know, climate change and the changes that they're seeing. And so in terms of education, we knew that it was kind of less of a heavy lift there in terms of trying to convince them that this was something to care about, because they've gone through the programs, they've learned about extreme heat and the data and why it's so important. And so we did have several of our participants come from our leadership programs, which was great. And then we thankfully have a lot of groups here that work on climate justice issues. And so we definitely share things with them, primarily the Miami Climate Alliance, who, you know, is made up of, you know, like 80 or so organizations that work on justice issues on like in a wide range of ways. And so really just, I think, really focusing in on the partnerships that we had to spread the word. And then also, you know, Tiffany has done a bunch of these King Tide events as well. So I know that they reached out to them and try to get that group to come out for this as well. So we had a good baseline, I think, for the outreach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, success, themes, and challenges. Maybe Tiffany, you want to take it over?
Success, themes, and challenges. Success, themes, challenges. Yeah, so, you know, from using the sensors that you have to retrieve and download and then redeploy is a little bit of a heavier lift than the citizen science work that is focused on the King Tide events. In part because that, you know, in order to be able to retrieve the information from the sensor, you have to be able to go back and get it and know where it is. And so, and to have so many locations and so many deployments, you know, for a volunteer effort, it's a lot to manage.
Mhm.
So, you know, I might suggest that, you know, make sure that you have enough capacity to manage the deployments that you know, would intend to utilize. And then I think we talked a bit about the success themes, you know, really about how the initiative has galvanized a number of new partnerships and new questions, and as well as, you know, exploring ways in which that information can be used for advocacy and policy development locally.
Oh, awesome. I do see that Mary Ellen wrote in Los Angeles. So, because we were, you know, mentioned, I didn't know if it was for New Orleans or Los Angeles. So she made sure to write in that it was about Los Angeles. And so you do have Dr. Barbara Ferreira, who is the public health director down in Los Angeles. And she's my former boss. And so hopefully you might be able to reach out to her and get some public health money to get some of those eye buttons, you know, get some funding there. So tell her I said hi. She knows me pretty well. All right, so let's see. We have some more questions here. Here comes a wonderful question about those wonderful tree canopies. We love those tree canopies, don't we? Okay, are there any fundraisers being conducted to help plant the trees or create the shady areas in the community, such as Liberty City?
I'm not aware of any. I mean, there are a couple of smaller grant programs. For example, I think Miami-Dade County that's a Miami-Dade County, wasn't that the million, is that?
Million Trees, Miami.
Parks,
Mm-hmm.
Dade Parks, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are some programs in place that community members can go to. Million Trees is one of them, and then they also have an initiative which I just learned this maybe like 2 weeks ago. I didn't even know about this, which is I think part of the issue we have to get around is getting people to know that these programs exist. They have another initiative where you can actually send in the address for a bus stop that you think would be a good candidate for shade and for canopy. And they'll actually research and try to figure out like who has ownership of the land. Is it the city? Is it the county? Is it unincorporated? Like who actually has ownership of that, and whether they have if it's a good candidate for planting trees. And if not, it sounds like they're trying to figure out other creative ways, because sometimes based on the location, it could create like obstruction to put a tree there in terms of driving. There's so many, this is what I've learned. Planting trees isn't as simple as it sounds. This is another thing I've learned from this project. Like you think it'd be super easy, but there's all these rules and regulations. Some of them are good, some of them might be cumbersome, but I know that they mentioned that they're trying to figure out whether there's other options. Like maybe you can green the roof, maybe they can be solarized. Like there should be other options to pursue, even if you can't plant a tree around that area of the bus stop. So yeah, I think, with the work that we've been doing, we can definitely start to identify some of those areas or hotspots and work with those programs that exist, at least to start to figure out like what are some good options. If not, what are the alternatives that we can pursue to still, provide shade and relief for these residents.
So because my world exists with tree huggers and water protectors, we have this song, Tree Huggers and Water Protectors Unite. So the most exciting thing that happened during the virtual world in Boston was that the tree warden started having his meetings virtual. And everybody was so excited because there's this one place you have to go in Boston to go to the meetings. And so now like the tree huggers are so excited because you'll follow this story in Boston. They were able to save these trees, these majestic trees that were going to be chopped down. And the city could not believe from one end to another all the organizing that took place to save these trees from being like chopped down. It's a beautiful story. I'll make sure to send you guys that so you can see how some of the things that I've learned just from my tree hugger friends. And like you said, there's so many codes and different things. It's just not as simple as I'm just going to go out here and plant this little seed and have myself a tree. And, in Atlanta, you can't cut any trees unless you get permission. It's a lot to be learned. I'm looking at the time and I know Rebecca is somewhere. Rebecca, how are we doing with time? Do we have any time for one more question, or do you want to?
Why don't we take that one last question and then I will wrap us up.
Okay, great. Are there any gaps in your capabilities that you think other agencies or shareholders could have filled to make it more effective overall? Any organizations that you would have tried to involve more from the start if you were going to redesign this project?
Maybe we would have written a proposal for this project a lot earlier on, so we could have been well-resourced in order to make it more effective overall. We just went for it. We just said we need to start collecting this information and raising awareness about heat in Miami. We did it. So it's
yeah, without the funding. Yeah. Hopefully that's something that will improve in the future and we'll get actual funding. I think at the time the county Office of Resilience and the City of Miami Division of Resilience and Public Works, this wasn't on their radar. I don't think they were ready for it yet either. They've both been really focused on like their City of Miami has been really focused on their stormwater plan, for example, and the county, spent the last few years working on their sea level rise strategy. So it was a lot of like water, flooding related threats that they were both focusing on. So I think at the time they also weren't necessarily ready to be partners on this, but I'm hoping that now that they're in conversations or learning more about what we've done so far, and now that we have more partners in place, that it can be a more formal partnership. And thankfully, the City of Miami since then, last year they did a partnership with NOAA, and they did a driving version of this where, so I'm sure you heard of it. Yeah, because I don't know, I think maybe Boston did this too.
Yeah,
but
we did. I was actually a part of the Wicked Hot. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did that too, where people drove around and collected data. They put things up in their car with sensors and collected data. So City of Miami did that last year, which is great. So now they also have more data, and they also have more questions now of like, okay, like what else do we need to do? What can we do with this next? And then the county now is actually starting to put more resources towards researching extreme heat. So I feel like the stars are aligning. So I'm hoping, things will fall in place for us so that we have their support as well, because we definitely need it. And then also hopefully funding.
Well, I'm so glad that Rebecca, because there is a major, my favorite word, I'm a miniature urban farmer. So we're going to do a lot of cross-pollinating, because the Wicked Hot program in Boston has done extremely well. And using that data, I know that there's a lot of other projects that are folded out on that. And I'm going to close this out. And like I said earlier, I do hope that part of the funding that's coming down from the President Biden, that $2 trillion for American jobs. Climate action is inseparable from the creation of millions of new jobs and how people's lives will be changed. And with inside of that 8 million that's going to be for transit, I'm hoping that you will be able to knock on those doors and get some of that money to work further with the work that you're doing, because I see some incredible cross-pollinating partnerships here that started, continue, that can definitely look at getting tree canopies and all kinds of other things that, more water basins, just a lot of things that I see in the future. And I wish you guys the best, but you will be hearing back from us up here. And so, Rebecca, I think you're ready to close us out.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tiffany and Myra, for joining us today. And thank you, Nancy, for your moderating prowess. That was awesome. It was really a pleasure to hear the conversation with the three of you, and just, really exciting to see the way that science can be useful and help shift our understanding of where things are at, and help move toward a more just future. So thank you so much for your work. As you may have seen, Melanie put into the chat a link with some of our future events. We have another one of these Lunch and Learns coming up on May 5th with Little Village Environmental Justice Organization from Chicago, Levejo, and their partner CNT, the Center for Neighborhood Technology, looking at a research project that they did around water access and COVID. So that should be great. And then we have another one on, I think it's May 26th, that is with local EJ Advocates Green Roots in Chelsea, and a partner that they have worked with at BU. So stay tuned for those. And then also in advance of Earth Day and Earth Week, next week we have an event in partnership with an art collective looking at sea level rise, and they have a project that is in part inspired by the AIDS quilt and people's stories of sea level rise and changing landscapes and their stories of home and place. So I think it will be a really, really interesting, thought-provoking event. So I hope you'll be able to join us for that as well. So thank you everyone so much again for joining us for lunchtime. And again, thank you so much to our presenters. Really appreciate hearing from all of you.